everybody, my name is Angela Cleary. I'm a life coach and I specialise in healing after narcissistic abuse. Hope you all had a lovely Christmas. It's hard to get back into it, isn't it? But today anyway, I want to talk about embracing your shadow. So we all have a shadow side, we all have a dark side. We all have a light and dark side. We can't have one without the other. You can't have light without dark. You can't have love without hate. You can't have sadness without happiness. You can't appreciate one without the other. But we can't live with one stronger than the other either. They both need to be in equilibrium, in balance. So with our shadow side, this is where we hide our things that we're ashamed of. So society has led us to feel shame for certain things that we shouldn't even need to feel shame for. We have certain desires or interests that our friends might take the piss out of, or we might feel shame for just because society tells us that these things are wrong. But when we ignore our shadow side and when we suppress certain parts of ourselves, they can get loud. The way I describe it is, can you imagine a child? A child taps you on the arm and you ignore that child. What's the child going to do? The child's going to start pulling your arm. And if you ignore the child again, the child is going to start screaming and start making a hullabaloo and start wrecking the place. If you ignore a child, they're going to get leery, they're going to get loud, they're going to get excited. This happens if you ignore your shadow. Your shadow will start creeping in and your shadow wants to be seen. Your shadow wants to be played with. It's like a child. It wants to be embraced. It wants to be your friend. It wants to hang out. It wants to do some cool things. But we suppress that side of ourselves. We block it away. We hide it. We're ashamed of these parts of ourselves. But if we ignore that shadow side, it will eventually come louder and louder and louder until that explosion comes, or that the craziness comes. And now when I first discovered shadow work, it was back, I think, around 2018, 2019, I'm not 100% sure, but I started my healing journey, and I've always been a good person. I've always tried to be a good person. But while I was doing my healing journey, I become more pure, more compassionate, and more caring. But there was this one voice in my head that used to come in. It was rare, but it used to come in, and looking back, it was always there. And it used to say things that really I did not agree with. It was disgusting, some of the things that this voice in my head said. And I was like, this is not who I am. That is not my voice. Whose voice is that? So this is how I started researching and stuff, and I discovered Carl Jung's information on shadow work and how to heal the shadow and how to embrace your shadow. You need to befriend your shadow. You need to acknowledge your shadow. You cannot ignore it. If you ignore it, it comes in that icky voice in your head, that horrible voice in your head. It's disgusting. And you know, I just knew in my heart and soul that the things that voice was saying, they weren't me. And I was like, this isn't right. Like, and if you leave that unchecked, this is my belief anyway, if you leave your shadow unchecked, it will eventually get bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is what leads to serial killers and you know, that kind of psychoticness. Like, but like, if we don't embrace our shadow, it gets icky, it gets dark, it gets fucking dark. And like, how I started integrating, like, you see, what you need to do is you understand that what you're ashamed of, you shouldn't be ashamed of. Society makes us ashamed of things that we shouldn't be ashamed of. But like, it's even a simple thing, right? For example, a few years ago, before I started my awakening, if I liked a Justin Bieber song, I would not have told any of my friends because I would have been ridiculed, taken the piss out of. But now I'd happily admit that I like Justin Bieber songs and he's fucking hot. Do you know what I mean? Whereas, as I said before, you hide, like, even hiding something like that, this is detrimental for your dark side. You need to bring that up to the light. You need to open. You need to be authentic. You need to be real. You need to be unafraid of admitting who you are. And then there's obviously your desires in life, maybe sexual desires or fetishes. Once you have a thought or a desire that doesn't harm another human being or doesn't harm yourself, why should you be ashamed of it? Why should we repress that side of ourselves? Why should we hide that certain side of ourselves? And that happens with all different things in our lives that we're embarrassed about, ashamed of, you know, afraid to admit. And this leads to repression, and it leads to you hiding your true being. But it also leads to the dark side getting darker and getting louder and getting angry and looking for the attention. So you do need to balance the two. And like, in fairness, this is where your creativity lies. This is where your childlike self lies, really. Because that's another thing. We're told to grow up way too fucking quickly. And like, our fun side, like, you know, if you do something, if you get excited for something, it's like, don't be so childish. I can be fucking childish if I want to be, and it's not being childish, it's being excited. It's being childlike. Not childish, childlike. And why can't we? Why are we forced to grow up so fucking early? It's not fair. Let's be young forever, like, you know. So this is what the shadow side is about. This is where we hide all those parts of ourselves that we don't show the world because we're afraid or we're ashamed of it, because society has told us to be that way, or our family or our friends. Fucking embrace that shit. Embrace your quirks. Fucking let your freak flag fucking fly and open up to your deeper side, your side where you have buried the exciting stuff, the creative stuff, the stuff that's fun, because your dark side isn't dark if you embrace it. Your dark side is actually quite colourful, which is weird, but like, if you embrace and befriend your shadow side, it actually brings colour into your life. When you have a balance of light and dark, it brings colour into your life. But if you ignore your dark side, it brings more dark into your life. And the darkness gets stronger and stronger and louder and louder. You really, really need to just, you can't suppress it. You can't block it away. As I said, you can't have one without the other. You cannot have light without dark. We have both, and we need to embrace both. We cannot be afraid of our darkness, or it's not our darkness. I like to call it my that's what she said side. And if you all know that that's what she said jokes, like, you know, it's nice, it's naughty, you know, but it's not harming anyone. So why should I suppress that part of myself? And I've noticed my own shadow going up and down. And like, you know, say I watch a streaming channel and there's ads at the top and bottom. And sometimes they're the ads you don't click on, the virus ads. But sometimes there's a picture of a semi-naked woman. And 1 minute I could be like, oh, she's hot. And then a few weeks later I could be like, oh, she should put some clothes on. Like I'm a prude or something. So this is when I notice that my shadow has gone too far on the light side. It's when I start to be prudish instead of that's what she said. Do you get me? So it can go either way, like, so I can notice myself if I get a little bit pervy, I'm like, yeah, I need to tone this back down a bit, my dark side is a bit too much. Or if I start to get a bit prudish, I'm like, okay, no, I don't like that side of myself either. I like the middle side. I like the that's what she said side. Do you know, and it is fun to be quirky, to be naughty, to embrace your shadow, embrace who you are. This is your creative side, really. It really is. It's your creativity, it's your I don't know, it's magical. There's a magic inside in your shadow. You know what I mean? So we have to stop being afraid or ashamed of things that we shouldn't be ashamed of. And that's the thing as well. We feel guilt over things that we shouldn't feel guilty over. Like, guilt is just, you shouldn't feel guilty for something if you didn't do anything wrong. We feel guilt for things that have nothing to do with us, that we've no control over. And this is in our shadow side as well. We're feeling guilt, we're feeling I don't know, responsible for other things or other people, and we feel ashamed or we feel guilty for certain things that are beyond our control. And like, we shouldn't feel guilty or shame for anything if we haven't done anything wrong. And that's the thing, we keep punishing ourselves as well. We punish ourselves for doing stuff wrong. We don't do things wrong. We're apologising and we're feeling guilty for things we don't do fucking wrong. We need to be aware of our thoughts. And this is when your shadow comes in as well, and when you can address your shadow, is like, be aware of your thoughts. Like, when I started my spiritual journey, like, I could tell you there was about 7 voices in my head. Really, genuinely, there was 7 different voices in my head when I started to fucking listen. Now there's just back to me and my unconscious. There's only 2 of us now. But there was all sorts of voices in my head, and that it was nearly a demonic voice it got to, that my shadow voice was. And it's not nice. It was like a demonic voice in my head saying these crude, horrible things. And I was like, this is not who I am. How is this voice in my head when this is not who my heart and soul is? Do you know, and you have to, like, I'm sure you can all understand me there. There is this voice in your head that says these awful things that you don't agree with. This is your shadow, and this is because you're not befriending your shadow. And that voice will get louder, harsher and cruder the more you ignore it. And this is why I started to address it, because before my mind was so busy, before I awakened, my mind was so busy that I didn't know there were 7 fucking voices in my head. So I didn't pay too much attention to that voice, even though I knew he was there. I knew it was there, I just didn't pay much attention to it. But as I said, once I was purifying myself and once I became more of a better person, I was like, this is a voice I do not want in my head. Before I didn't mind it, I ignored it, or I drank through it, or whatever. I do not want that demonic voice in my head. And as soon as I started to befriend my shadow and embrace my shadow, my creativity started coming out. This voice disappeared completely. It's gone, like, and it hasn't come back. But as I said, I'm mindful of my shadow now. I can see from my reaction to certain pictures or my reaction to certain things if I'm gone too far light or too far dark, and I bring it back. Because it's nice and it's fun to have that side. It's fun to bring out the side of yourself that brings you alive. Because that's what your dark side kind of does. It's like your light side is kind of your good side, and your dark is your bad. And I'm not saying bad in a bad way, but it's naughty, it's fun, it's quirky, it's the stuff that brings you alive and gives you a bit of a spark. But when we ignore that, our life becomes quite miserable, and this dark side just gets louder and darker and darker and darker and darker and darker. And you don't want that. You want the even balance. You want the yin yang effect, I suppose. A masculine and feminine. It has to be there. We both have yin yang energy in us. That's masculine and feminine as well. You have to have both. You have to balance your both. Because if one is too much more than the other, it creates a disturbance and a kind of an imbalance. So that's the message for today. Really, is just listen to your thoughts. Listen to those voices in your head, because they're all you. But the more you heal, the bad ones will go away, and you'll be just left with your happy. Your ego's in there as well, but sure, we get through that part. But listen to your thoughts. Listen to those thoughts in your head, and if there is that voice in you that comes up very seldom, but comes up, and he or she says fucking shitty stuff, you need to address that. Because if you know in your heart and soul that whatever they said in your head wasn't a part of who you are, you need to start thinking, okay, I need to address this. Because if you don't, that voice gets louder. As I said, it's like a child that doesn't get attention. Your shadow will get louder and louder and louder and louder. If you keep ignoring it, it will. And this is where your bitterness comes from as well, I think, because when we don't address our shadow, we're more susceptible to negative, I suppose, feelings and negative energies and stuff. So we just need to be very, very mindful of what's going on in our mind, because our mind it's a magical thing when you start to listen to it, and when you start to observe the fact that there is more to you than just what you've been doing. Do you know what I mean? You just need to listen to yourself, and when you listen to yourself, you will discover such magic. And when you listen to your shadow, you will actually discover parts of yourself that are quite amazing, to be honest. They really, really are. So just embrace your shadow, guys. Just embrace that shit, like. Embrace who you are, because your shadow is a part of who you are. And once you don't harm anyone, you should not be ashamed of how you feel or how you think, once it doesn't affect or harm other people or yourself. So embrace that shadow. And if you want some help on your spiritual journey or on your healing journey, give me a discovery call today, and I would love to help you find yourself and embrace your shadow. Thanks for listening today. Please like and share, and like and share my page. See you soon.